Blog Talk Radio.
Shalom, Lekulam. Peace to everyone. Welcome to the Reset Button Season 3. This season, we welcome the listener to join us while we journey through Isaiah, one of the most controversial books in the Word. We would like to accomplish understanding of the salvation of Israel mentioned. Is it one spoken of in the New Testament? Is it someone we're waiting on? Or is it in the past? Walk through this with us as we attempt to uncover this mystery. The call-in number is 516-595-8238. And press 1 at any time that you have questions or that you would like to leave a comment. Our collective email is histaught1talkradio@gmail.com. Our Facebook page is His Taught Ones and His Taught Ones Talk Radio. We also have the YouTube page at His Taught Ones Talk Radio. Subscribe and we'll be posting our episodes every week. Shalom and have a good show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another season of His Taught Ones. Talmidim, yo, here we go, back at it again. You did, yourself, Shema and some friends. We learned hard through better sheets, the Melechim, now fresh start to what is hot. I never yin, here come the prophets, they're dropping some knowledge, abolishing doctrines, apology nonsense. They bring the word, you can call them the pinpoint, given by the hand of the head, he is the pinpoint. Or could it be it's another? So many differences from the children, it's a misnomer. Honestly, the aroma is hideously unbearable. There is no one accord. How dare we say that we're hearing you? I don't wanna see
Kadosh Yisrael, Holy One of Israel. Anachnu modim lecha al yom nosaf we al milah. We thank you for another day and for your word. Barech bivakasha et ha-mifkash hazeh. Please bless this gathering. Bo'u nishmiah. Let us say Amen. Amen.
Shalom, shalom, everyone. Welcome to another segment of the Reset Button. This is your host, Shema Ben Yael, a.k.a. Shema Talmido, and I am joined with Yediyah. You there, Yediyah?
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, so today we will be covering the final chapters of Yeshaya or Yeshayahu, Isaiah. Man, it seems like a long journey through Isaiah, right? And after this, we will have a finale next week, but I'll speak on that later. This has been a long season, and ready to close it out, ready to finish it out. I thank everyone for tuning in, that is either online or listening live on the phone line or listening back right now. And I'll pass the mic to Yediyah if you have anything to say to open it up before we get started.
All right, it's just a blessing to be here once again for another show. Very excited to go through these final chapters. I found a lot of things in there that I do want to discuss. So definitely a show that you want to be attentive to. A lot of the things that are going to be brought out from my side of the house. I'm interested to see what Brother Shema has, but from my side of the house, I definitely saw some things in there that I do want to talk about. Other than that, I just thank everybody for tuning in, and I'm ready to get started.
All right. Well, jumping right into it. We ended last week with chapters 60 through 63, and I'm closing it out with speaking on a certain return that he kind of wanted from us. Not us as in today, but us as in them back then. And it kind of leads us into this very chapter, chapter 64. And what I will do is pass the torch to the Yah to start the chapter 64 off, and then we will proceed from there.
All right. So just starting everything off, as the brother said, what I had saw initially was a continued prayer or plea that contextually started in Isaiah 63. So if everybody recalls, the ending of Isaiah 63, there was a plea, of asking for this salvation to be brought to them. And as we start in 64, we see that continuation. And in that continuation, they're asking for help while at the same time magnifying his name. So there was a few points within that that I wanted to bring out, and I'll just go one, and then I'll relinquish the mic to you, Brother Shema, and then you could bring in. But that is the fullness of my commentary for this chapter. So I will just continue, as we go back and forth, I'll just continue that as my points. But I have several points that I wanted to bring out within the asking for help while magnifying his name. So starting in verse 5, it says, it says, you meet him who rejoices and does righteousness. I'm reading from the New King James Version, by the way. And does righteousness, who remembers you in your ways. You are indeed angry, for we have sinned. In these ways we continue, and we need to be saved. Within that, I just saw that, the need to be saved. So the people then, they understood that there was a need to be saved. The question lies in what type of salvation are they requesting? Okay, just by knowing the narrative thus far in context, we know that they are in captivity. So this would, in my mind, bring the understanding that that is the salvation that they're asking for, to be brought out of captivity, be taken away from the oppression that they are suffering at that current moment. And then we also see within that we also see that they acknowledge their sin. So they acknowledge their sins. And we also see that we also see that the Most High welcomes the righteous. He rejoices in that. So we also get an understanding of his character. So those are the few things I wanted to bring out at this point. And like I said, as we go back and forth, I'll bring some more stuff out.
All right. So I want to go back over that same verses. Actually, I'll start from verse 1. Excuse me, going down to verse 5, because this, I just made a post and it was commented on, and I was talking about sound bites. Someone said even the sound bites is true or something like that. I beg to differ depending on what the topic or the subject is, because we're going to see something continuing on even from this chapter on to the next. But I want to start with just reading. I also want to say, before I read it, I definitely want to parse verses 4 and possibly even 5. But I'm going to explain why when I get there. So verse 1, like the kindling of a melting fire, a fire that bubbles water, make your name known to your enemies. Okay, so the enemies is in this sense of what is being explained, apparently don't know, right? So that nations will tremble before you. When you perform awesome wonders that we had not expected, you descended and the mountains melted because of you. People had never heard, never observed, no eye had ever seen a God except for you, that acted for those who await him. Verse 4, you have eliminated those who rejoiced in doing righteousness, who would invoke your ways in prayer. You became enraged because we had sinned. Okay. I want to stop there before I could finish the verse. That can sound confusing to people. And the reason I stop is because we see that same thing in Psalms. We're not there yet, but I just wanted to point out how they speak is what I'm saying. They can jump from person to person. They can be speaking of an individual or a group and go right into the next group that's speaking of. I just want that to be known. We had always relied on them and been saved. So relying on who? The people that were sent by Yah. We have all become defiled, and all our righteousness is like a worn-out garment. We all wither like a leaf, and like a wind, our sins carry us off. This is that popular verse that talks about us being like dirty rags or filthy rags. I think it says in the KJV. But we never hear that verse 4. And we never look at the context of everyone in totality or in total as far as people is concerned. Is he talking about everybody in that verse is the question when that is being said. And that was my point where I posted it on Facebook, for those that might be my friends on that. I don't see it as though he's talking about everyone in this particular verse because of verse 4 in the translation I have. That's why I want to parse it, by the way. And also because of just past times, us going through contextually and seeing the separation between the two, his faithful servants and those that even consider his enemies, who are his quote-unquote, or should be his people. But I guess we can allow the text as we continue to either correct me or vouch for me. And with that, I yield for that point.
Yeah, that was good. I just want to caveat for my next point on what you were saying about the filthy rags and all that, which ties into, the confession of the acknowledgement of, their condition. When I speak about this, I'm speaking as if, I'm speaking to the narrative. I'm not speaking from a standpoint, it could relate to us, like I always say, but I'm speaking from the narrative perspective. The narrative is these people at that time speaking out, crying out to the Most High. So, as the brother said, we have to them, first and foremost. I know a lot of times what we do is try to relate it to us first and say, oh, this is for me. But if you understand how a narrative works, he said, in all our righteousness, that is a possessive thing, are like filthy rags. So if I say that, I'm talking about me and Shema. If I say our righteousness, filthy rags, if I'm speaking from the panel perspective, I'm talking about me and Shema. I'm not talking about nobody else. I'm not talking about none of the callers or anything. So that's first and foremost to be understood in my mind. So all our righteousness are like filthy rags. We all fade as a leaf, and our iniquities, like the wind, have taken us away. Personal phrases that are being said in the situation. So, with that being said, this is again confession of transgressions, and at the same time speaking of the effects of those transgressions, which brings the understanding that sin separates a person from the Most High, and it makes them, made them in that situation helpless, as you continue to read through verse 7. And there is no one who calls on your name, dares himself, or who steers himself up to take hold of you, for you have hidden your face from us and have consumed us because of our iniquities. So, again, in their minds, in their thought process, they understand that it was their iniquities that separated them from what is specified in the KJV as the Lord, but we know that's Yod Hey, Wow Hey. So this is an understanding that they had, and if, I am following, the Hebraic thought, then that is a lesson to me that, the iniquities and things separates me from the Most High. So that's my point. I'll pass the mic.
That's good. That's good. I wanted to just, because my point is, I don't have no points on this, so I just want to comment. And it's something that needs to be paid attention to. I really want to press it hard, because I had this conversation yesterday with someone when we was talking about even the New Testament. And I'm going to bring it out right now, even though we're not in the New Testament, because it's going to make a point in regards to verse 6. I forgot how it's quoted. Correct me or say something if you remember. You did, yeah. But Romans 3, when it says no one is righteous, is that what it says? When Paul says that? No one is righteous?
Yeah, no, not one.
No, yeah. Not one. Okay, now, I'm about to make a point. Then when you go to Matthew 4:4, Matthew 4:4, and I think Luke 4:4, I think it's Luke 4:4, but I know Matthew 4:4, when Yeshua says, you hypocrites, you take on the traditions and the commandments of man, but not the commandments of God. The thing I ask people is this: is he talking to everyone, or is he talking to particular people at that time? I sit there and I wait. Normally they would end up saying, yes, he's talking to them. Then I go back to Romans 3, and when Paul says, no one is righteous, not even one, I ask them, they normally say, well, he's talking about everybody on that one, because they really don't, it's not as clean cut as Yeshua, right? But then we go through context, and then we see the points that he associated with that, and then we see that he's talking about someone else. Then we take them to where he quoted it from, and then we see that it's a distinction that was made by Yah in that quote that he took from the people that he was speaking of. And we're going to get there in Psalms. I'm going to bring that out, giving a little precursor to that now, okay? And then also within that psalm, I'll say this: it kind of does what I had said when I had said about the you have eliminated those who rejoiced in your doing righteousness, who will invoke your ways in prayer. You become enraged because we had sinned. Same thing in Psalm. It says that it talks about it jumps from one person to the other real quick. Now let's go to his verse 6. Verse 6, it says, "There's no one to call out your name." There is no one to call out your name. How does it read in your version? Before I continue, verse 6. Just that first part.
Verse 6?
Mm-hmm.
All right. It'll be verse 7 in the New KJV. But it says, and there is no one who calls on your name.
Okay, cool. Now, I agree more with what this mine says. There's no one to call out in your name. The reason I do, and I could be corrected, but the reason I do is because it actually makes sense with verse 4. And I know it reads differently. I actually read the New KJV. That's why I said I want to parse this out, because I want to see exactly what it says, even from an actual parsing versus what we're reading with these translations. I think it would make more sense with the one that I'm reading, because we do know it was people that called out his name. Another reason I say it makes more sense, and I know I'm fast forwarding, but I have to make this point, is because in that psalm I'm talking about, where Shaul or Paul quoted from, there is no one righteous, he says the same thing in that one, that no one is looking or seeking him. In that psalm, no one seeks him. But the problem is, we do know that people were seeking him. The prophets, the righteous man and or woman. They were. So he was talking about the very first verse when it says what is it saying in Psalm? The fool says in his heart that there is no God. So he was associating all that being said to the fool, saying that the fool is not searching. Then he said that the fool has done basically wrong to his righteous ones in that psalm. So my point is, it makes more sense to me in verse 6 when it says, there is no one to call out in your name. What does that mean? No one to call out in your name. Who was the ones that stepped out before the people, for the people, spoke to the Most High for the people? but he removed them as it said in verse 4. So I wanted to really pinpoint that because I think that was special. There's no one to call out your name who arouses himself to hold fast to you when you hide your face from us and melt us away because of our iniquity. So that's all I had. Hopefully it was okay that I jumped around, but I wanted to bring some of them points out to help this to be understood a little better. And with that, I yield.
Okay, I was trying to look at it in the Hebrew. Yeah, that's definitely something we could parse or what I'm saying, look at it together, bring it out, and maybe share it in the group and discuss it further.
Yeah, because that's a heavy doctrine. That's one of the heavy doctrines. Just like no one is righteous doctrine. But that could be killed just by taking them to where it comes from. But this one is probably you can't really because this is not a quote. This is just here. You have to show people the examples like what I did, or like me and you talking about now. Actually parse it to see what it says, perhaps. But I think we can do a good job.
When I was looking at it, just so far, I believe it's like where. So that's like how in Hebrew, and how, and then it would be. I'm not looking at it right now, but I believe it's Kore, I believe, after that. So it's kind of like, so far, just without me really putting an eye on it, just off of muscle memory, it would be like, and how, do we call your name or something like that. So basically saying it's more of a questional type of thing, opposed to a statement like no one called your name. So I can definitely see a discrepancy just off of muscle memory. So
and that makes sense what you say. And how can we call your name now? If you remove the very people who was your mouthpiece, or our mouthpiece towards you. Because remember that, as we saw, they didn't want to speak, going back and do Devarim, I believe it was. They didn't want to speak or have direct contact with the Most High anymore. They wanted someone to speak for them. So if he actually removed the prophets at this point from them, then it makes sense for them to say, well, how can we talk to you? So I'm glad you even parsed it from just a memory. You know what I'm saying? Again, I think that's something that we can do. I got to get back into parsing heavily anyway. I just want to, but yeah, that's dope. Good job. Throw me over.
Okay, so my last point, which to me is big, is in verses 10 and 11. It says, your holy cities are a wilderness. Zion is a wilderness. Jerusalem a desolation. Right? 11. Our holy and beautiful temple, where our fathers praise you, is burnt up with fire, and all our pleasant things are laid waste. So this is the people speaking to the Most High. And what it does, or what it did for me, is that it laid out the condition of the land in context. So in context, we understand at this point the temple was destroyed. The land in ruin. So all the things leading up to this concerning salvation of the people and salvation of the land and restoration, and, you know, there's some more stuff to be explained as we continue. I got notes on. But we understand, or we should have an understanding at this point, I know I do, that the land is in ruin. The temple is destroyed. So anything from this point, talking about restoration of the temple and everything like that, we understand that it is not going to skip over the current situation. So anything towards a, you know, talking about salvation and people coming to the temple and all that, it has to talk, like the temple has to be restored after this point. Anything, like if something comes to pass, like right now we know the temple destroyed. So if we read in later manuscripts that the temple was rebuilt, we have to attribute everything that was said here in Isaiah towards any temple or any restoration of the land. We have to attribute it to that, in my mind. So that's, you know, that's my point for that. I pass the mic.
All right, good stuff. If there's anyone that is listening online right now and you have any comments and or questions, please press 1 at this time, because if not, we will be going to the next chapter, because I don't have anything to add or any extra points for this chapter. Give you all a couple of seconds in a moment. All right. So this next chapter, so we're going into the next chapter, and we see that last chapter they were pleading, in a sense, or confessing their sin, so to speak, right? Confessing their guilt. And now we're moving into the following chapter where there's a response occurring, I would say, by Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, and he starts off in his response. You know I like to read, y'all. But in the response in my version, which is D for those that do not know the version I normally read on this show, the Stone Edition Tanakh, it says, I was accessible to those who did not ask. I could be found by those who did not seek me. I said, here I am, to a nation not called by my name. I stretched out my hands all day to a straying people who walk the road that is not good, following after their own thoughts. The people who continually anger me to my face, who sacrifice in their gardens and burn incense of the bricks, who sit in graves and sleep with corpses, who eat the flesh of the swine and have the sauce of forbidden foods in their utensils, who say, keep to yourself, do not come near me, for I am holier than thou. It's interesting. I remember when we were speaking prior to this, and we were saying, like, man, what was the most things talked about leading up to this point by the Most High? It wasn't your just normal stuff that they knew. You know, you never really heard anything so much about eating clean or what to wear or things like that. It was more so dealing with idolatry. Even in this one, it talks about it. But this is probably one of the first times we heard something about flesh of swine. So I thought that was interesting. I wanted to point that out. And that's really all I have for this verse. For this first point, is that he continues to talk about that because that seems to remove us from him more than anything. Idolatry. I think that's important. I think we should really look at that even in our lives presently today. But the main point, or one of the other points to this point I wanted to point out, was this is the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that we see something being spoken of about swine. And that's it.
All right. So, of course, I'm going to caveat, and then I'm going to say a little bit more or elaborate or add to what the brother is saying. So, as he said, it was a response. In this response, I kind of saw it as God's or, the Most High's perspective of his relationship with Israel. And in that response, or withholds that perspective, he spoke of their rebellion. As it said, they rebelled according to their own thoughts. So what that tells me is that they wasn't thinking as the Most High set for them to think. They did things according to their own thoughts. They wasn't governed by the thoughts of the Most High. They didn't consider the ways that was laid out for them in earlier manuscript as we read. So one of the things that the brother already spoke about was, the swine or whatever, and he spoke about the idol worship. But when I look at it, basically 3 and 4, 2, 3, 4, it kind of lays out what their rebellion is. So again, I always speak to the narrative, but also I always say that it could relate to us as well. So, me as following this and saying this is the thought process that I want to have, I follow the Hebraic thought and I relate it to, okay, in this day and age, if this was rebellion then, would it be rebellion today? That's how I approach it. So when I do that, I'm looking at, okay, what did he say was rebellious? So the first thing in verse 3, and people who provoke me to anger continually to my face, who sacrifice in gardens and burn incense on altars of brick. So I look at that and I see that they sacrifice and offered unlawfully because it wasn't according to what he laid out or what Moshe laid out. They were doing it differently. So that's something for me to consider. 4, who sit among the graves and spend the night in tombs. I'm going to stop right there because that's a separate than what the latter part of the verse says. So then I look at that. I say, well, what does that mean to me? To me, that means they revered the dead to an extent of, there's nothing wrong with, I guess, paying your respects. But when I look at this, I see who sit among the graves. So people who just chilling out in cemeteries, and, you know, back then they had tombs as well. So, and spend the night in tombs. So you like basically, you know, I've actually seen things on TV where people preserve the body. Like it was a guy, he preserved his wife's body. He was even having sexual intercourse with her. You know what I mean? So we know that these things, according to the Torah, you know, as far as dealing with dead bodies, the instructions, this would go against the instructions. You know, so I looked at that, and then lastly, it not only just the swine flesh, but I just attributed as having a abominable diet, period, because it says who eats swine flesh and the broth of abominable things is in their vessels. So basically, they have an abominable diet. I use the abominable just because that's the word that's being used. But basically, they didn't have a proper diet as laid out according to the instructions of Moshe, which would be, you know, attributed to the Most High's instructions. So those are the things I've seen that concludes that point that I wanted to make. I'll pass the mic.
Okay, so going forward into this next point, this is why we always actually speak on context. So I'm going to go backwards before I read this. Let's go back to 64. 64 verse 4 verse 5. I will read them both. It says in my version, you have eliminated those who rejoiced in your righteousness, who would invoke your ways in prayer. So it's prayer, you know, prayer for us, and basically you became enraged because we had sinned. Now that's two different people, but I know in KJV it reads differently. It don't even sound like what mine says. And in New KJV, I believe, it don't even sound like what mine says. We had always relied on them and been saved. Definitely don't say it like that, right? We have all become defiled, and all our righteousness is like a worn-out garment. But this sounds like more so the doctrine everybody knows. Verse 4 and verse 5 sounds more so like it's talking about all of us. We are just pleading for ourselves. We're not distinctively separating ourselves from those leaders who was righteous in the eyes of the Most High, right? So it sounds like that's just talking about a group of people, all of us who had sinned. So I want to go ahead and I want to read verses. I'm going to read verses 8 through 11, if you all okay with that. So, thus says Yah, just as when a wine exists in the cluster, and someone said, do not destroy it, for there is a blessing within it. So will I do for my servants, not to destroy everything. So, for the sake of his servants, he won't destroy everything, right? He won't put his hands on whatever the subject is, right? But then when you go back to that last chapter I just read, I read that he removed, once he removed them who was praying for them, then he basically, in their confession, that's when they started receiving these, I guess, quote-unquote, acts of leaving them, in a sense. Right? So let's keep going. I will bring forth offspring from Jacob or Jacob, and from Judah, the heir of my mountains. My chosen ones will inherit it, and my servants will dwell there. Fast forward in verse 10, it says, the Sharon will become a fold for the sheep in the valley of the Ahor. will become fit for cattle to lie down. For my people who have sought me out. Wait a minute. That's verse 65, right? Go back to verse 6 and 64. There is no one to call out in your name. But in his version, it says no one calls out, basically, his name. But he's saying right here that for my people who have sought me out. There's a distinction. There has always been a distinction, people. There has always been a remnant or a quote-unquote righteous people within the people that were seeking out. So we got to do what they would say contextual analysis or contextual criticism or whatever to really understand a subject matter. Let me keep reading. But you who have forsaken Yah, who have forgotten my holy mountain, who set a table for God or Gad, who fill a libation to many. I will consign you to the sword, and you will all slump down and slaughter, because I called and you did not answer. I spoke and you did not hear. You did what is evil in my eyes, and what I did not desire, you chose. That's a distinction. That's two different people he's speaking of right there. And with that, I yield. Wait, no. I want to say one thing before I yield. We have read in past times that it's people that have done right in his eyes, or everything right in his eyes. There's a distinction. So my point is, when that whole we are filthy rags, I'm bringing this is my point in chapter 64, is not everyone. That's it.
Tov Mild. All right. So I'm going to speak on the subject within this chapter, which speaks of the repayment of the Lord. Yod He Waw He. I just want to say that when you read it, I'm going to go to verse 6. And it's going to complement what the brother just was talking about. All right. 6 and 7. Let me go to it real quick. All right. Behold, it is written before me. I will not keep silent, but will repay, even repay into their bosom, your iniquities and the iniquities of your fathers together, says the Lord, who have burned incense on the mountains, burned incense on the mountains, and blasphemed me on the hills. Therefore, I will measure their former work into their bosom. All right, so what I got from that so far within my point is that the payback or the repayment is for the continued iniquities throughout the generations. This speaks volumes because it's just like, you know how a parent is like, you know what, you are building up your whoopings. You know, when they don't get you right away, and you keep doing stuff thinking you're getting away with it, you ain't doing nothing but making that whooping worse. All right, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Second thing is a lot of times relating to us today, we talk about, you know, we're being punished for, you know, we allude to Deuteronomy 28:68, so on and so forth. Which contextually I have talked about that before, but at the same time I always talk about how things can relate. So just with this said, it's a lot of people talk about generational curses. So something that is carried over through the generations You're suffering from something that was initially started before you even existed. The punishment could have been on an ancestor, and it just carries on through the generations. And if there is no change, then it can only continue or get worse. Just like it's a conditioning type of thing. So you have to break cycles, or there has to be a separation between you and what is deemed either a stigma or a stereotype of the people. So you have to set yourself apart, separate yourself from that stigma, from that stereotype. Now, you may still be stereotyped, but you will not suffer, or you may not continue that cycle through your generation of people that come after you, if that makes sense. I'm going to jump back to the narrative, but I did want to put that out. So I'm going to jump back to the narrative throughout the generations, right? So relating to what the brother was saying earlier, and also what I'm saying in bringing it to a modern time or modern understanding or concept, we also look at verses 8 through 12. It says, "Thus said the Lord, as the new wine is found in the cluster, and one says, do not destroy it, for a blessing is in it." Right? What they say, don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. Okay, let's keep going. "So will I do for my servants' sake, that I may not destroy them all." So what it asking is like don't kill off everybody. What comes to mind right now is Noah and his ark. 8 people was on the ark. But throughout that land, many was destroyed. But he didn't wipe everybody out. So it's kind of the same concept. "So will I do for my servant's sake, that I may not destroy them all. I will bring forth descendants," okay, "and from Jacob and from Judah, an heir of my mountains. My elect shall inherit it, and my servants shall dwell there. Sharon shall be a fold of flocks, and the valley of Ahor a place for herds to lie down, for my people who have sought me." So back to what Shema was talking about. He said nobody has called out to you. You sought somebody by calling out to them. So I just want to kind of, I guess, relate that to what he was saying, and also make it a stronger point with bringing that, or emphasize on that point. But you are those who forsake the Lord, who forget my holy mountain. He read all this. All right, so I'm going to go to 12. "Therefore, I will number you for the sword." So now he's talking about the people who forsake. So he made a distinction there, is the point. "The sword, and you shall all bow down to the slaughter. Because when I called, you did not answer. When I spoke, you did not hear, but did evil before my eyes, and chose that which I do not delight." So the point is that punishment, the Most High is paying back to the people for the continued iniquities throughout the generations, is not for everybody. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, if you not cursed, if you're not claiming these curses, you're not Israel. If you say, "Oh, I'm not cursed," you're not Israel." But we clearly see that the Most High made a distinction of who He cursed, who He punished, so on and so forth. So that does not automatically identify who you are just because you're being punished. It could identify that you're wicked, if you want to say that. But He did not everybody that was Israel. He punished those that continued in those generational sins and did not separate themselves and did not call upon His name or did not answer when He called. And with that, in the words of Shema, I yield.
I want to continue off of that. Like, when you think of parents and they have kids, say if they have two kids and one is sinning, basically breaking their law, the parents' law, both of them don't get punished normally. Sometimes they both will, depending on if the parent told the older one or both of them. But if it's only one that has done something wrong or in school or something like that, it's only one that gets the treatment. And just in case people are like on the fence about what's being brought out right now, let's continue to read 13 through 15. Therefore, thus says Adonai, my Lord, Yah Elohim, behold, my servants will eat, and you will starve. Behold, my servants will drink, and you will thirst. Behold, my servants will rejoice, and you will be ashamed. Behold, my servants will exult from good-heartedness, and you will cry out from pain of heart and wail from a broken spirit. You will leave your name as an oath, my chosen ones, and the Lord, Yah Elohim, will put you to death, but we will call His servants a different name. His servants was no filthy rags, y'all. Sorry. I see Brother Mercy's in the queue. I don't know if you wanted to say something first before we bring Brother Mercy in, but that was my last point, I believe, for the chapter.
All right, I got a few more points. You could bring Brother Mercy in right now, and then I have one main point with two sub, topics underneath that. So,
all right, Brother Mercy, you're live.
Yeah, happy shalom, brothers. Happy Sabbath. I wanted to touch on what Shamar said when he had said no one, he read the verse in Isaiah, no one calls on your name. If you think, let's think about a wedding ceremony. And you know how the person at the wedding who's officiating the wedding, he says, speak now or forever hold your peace. So it's generally accepted, since no one speaks out, that the wedding proceeds and no one has opposed, so everyone has agreed to the two parties getting married. But there's a background or a backdrop of this. The bride and groom sends out invitations and invites only those who are in favor of them getting married. So if the bride and groom say, or if the person officiating the wedding say no one has opposed this wedding, what is he really saying? He's saying, according to the people that the bride and groom invited to the marriage, no one there opposed the wedding because they didn't speak out. And that don't mean everybody there agree with the wedding, even still, because he says hold your peace. So I'm saying that to say, when you don't speak out, from a legal standpoint, is your silence to many means you agree with what's going on, even if you silently disagree. From a legal standpoint, you agree. So if he says no one calls his name, it could be talking about like a public call. No one is publicly acknowledging Yahweh. No one is publicly acknowledging, the ways of Yah. That's what's going on today. People are not publicly, the people who keep it Torah, they do it quietly or silently, or like even Elijah. What did Elijah say? King Ahab killed all the prophets. I'm the only one left. Why is Elijah saying that? Because I'm the only one talking against King Ahab. These other prophets you got, yeah, but they ain't saying nothing. I'm the only one saying what he's doing is wrong. That's what, to me, no one means. It means no one else is speaking out against what's going on. There's atrocities going on. The police is doing what they do, and so you got some people speaking out against it, but are they being heard? So the thing is, no one just simply means, from that standpoint, I'm taking it as, it means that no one is speaking out against. There's some wrongs that I have not spoken out against. So my silence means I agree with it, although I silently disagree, from a legal standpoint. Because if you don't speak out against something, it'll continue to go on. And I just wanted to say that's how I take those scriptures when it says that. It's saying no one is, like Isaiah. Isaiah is speaking out against what's going on. Elijah is speaking out what's going on. But when you start speaking out atrocities and injustice, sometimes you feel like you're by yourself. Because it's like no one else is speaking out against it. Now, they might agree with you silently, but that don't silently agreeing with what's right doesn't change anything. You have to actually speak out for it to change. So that's all I want to say about that. No one is righteous just simply means ain't nobody publicly being righteous. You righteous, but you doing it silently. So privately. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like we go into the restaurant and say, "Oh, you wrong for serving pig." Ain't nobody saying that. So or you go to a church and say, "You wrong for eating pig feet." Ain't nobody doing that. So yeah, no one is righteous. So that's how I see that. So I'm just saying, what y'all brothers think about that?
Well, since you just asked what I would think about it, I was just going to leave it and say thank you for that. It wasn't going to respond, but you asked. So that's a good take on it, especially with this particular chapter, especially. I say more. So I still got you on live, by the way. Just want you to know that. That for this particular chapter, I would say that could match because remember I read verse 4 and it said he removed those that was actually praying for them. And then when Yediyah had looked at the Hebrew and more so said, who will we call? You know what I'm saying? But so the people who he's speaking of, yeah, they probably not calling out publicly because he removed the ones who was calling out. Like you said, Isaiah's calling out publicly, which goes with what I said as far as when he removed his prophets, his servants. As far as the no one is righteous one, that one I would have to say I respectfully, I ain't even going to say disagree because your take is still valid. It's a good outlook on it. But in context of the no one is righteous, he literally was talking about the fool who says there is no God because he made a distinction between a fool and his servants again. He made a distinction. So as far as your point, as far as the calling out, I would say that's a great point. I would say that can match for that chapter 64. But concerning chapter 65 and the one I just read from verses 13, it shows that there is a distinction between his servant and the other. So that's my answer on that, or my thought, I guess, to your question. I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I would say, it was an interesting take, and I definitely can see it to be relatable to this narrative, and also just in today's age,
Most definitely. Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I would want to look at it a little bit more before I say, yeah, that's it. You know what I'm saying? But I'm definitely open to that understanding. Like, I don't see nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I don't think it even say no one.
Right.
Cause, because there's no low. There's
right.
There's no low ahad there. There's no low ahad. So that would be no one. So that's not there in the text. It's so it's more of a question saying how.
Right. And that goes with what I'm saying.
How do we call, how does one call your name or call upon you, in that sense? So once I parse it, or once me and Shema parse the text, we can render a better understanding of what's actually being said there. So that's my take on it. That's my comment, and I'll just leave it at that.
All right, Brother Mercy, I don't know if you want to say something else, but if you do, go ahead. If not, then we'll proceed. In the famous words of Yediah, 3, 2, 1. All right. The floor is yours, Yediah. I don't have any more points. I'll let you end it. And also, I guess we could just go straight to the next chapter, too. Unless go ahead and I'll ask if anybody have anything to say to what you said, and then we'll go. And you could just take over with the last chapter.
All right, so within this chapter as well, we talked about God's perspective of, his relationship with Israel. We talked about this repayment, to those who continued the iniquities through the generations. And then the other thing that I saw in here that was talked about that I want to highlight is the new heaven and earth concept in context. Now, I know we approach the text in a reset fashion, but even though we want to approach it in that manner, there's still some things in our mind that we've already went over and that, may still be malingering in your mind, which, is natural. So I do know of a new heaven and new earth that is spoken of. But I would like to go off of the context just to show what is in this narrative. Anybody does with it is their own prerogative, okay? But I may speak of my mindset when I read this. I may not. It just depends. But with that being said, I'm just going to approach it according to this narrative, and then we'll go from there. So starting at verse 17. I'm going to read to 19, and then I explain. So it say, behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered or come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. All right? So I'm going to kind of break it down as I go along. So we see this concept of new heaven, new earth. All right? And the former shall not be remembered or come to mind. So doing away with the old, let's just say, because we use these as anonym. So anonym of new would be old, just like how we say New Testament, Old Testament. So I'm just going to use that term. All right, so to do away with the old heaven and the old earth is what it would be seen to be saying. And it will not be remembered or come to mind, okay? So it's like a brand new start, right? But be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. All right? So he's saying what I create, you need to be glad and rejoice forever. All right? This word forever always kind of, it's for me, when I read the word forever in the text, it's something that clicks in my mind that is not the forever that I'm thinking of, that I'm accustomed to, or that it is explained as what forever is. For behold, I create Jerusalem, okay? So this new heaven, this new earth is being attributed to Jerusalem as a rejoicing, because he said, be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. And then you go back up to the context, I create new heavens and new earth. For behold, I create Jerusalem. All right. So far, this new heaven, new earth seems to be a new Jerusalem, which sounds familiar. I'm not going to dive completely into it, but like I said, I approach it with a reset mind, but there are certain things that I still remember. All right, New Jerusalem, new heaven, new earth. And when we do get to that, I will go back to this and really break down what I see. Okay. All right. So just knowing what, I've read so far is that it seems to be a restoration of the former Jerusalem. And anybody can let me know whether they agree with that after I finish my point. I would love to hear feedback on this. All right. So in my mind currently right now, this new heaven, this new earth is a restored Jerusalem. Okay? Because like I just read earlier, it's in ruins. The temple has been destroyed. We already know the state of Jerusalem, the temple, in the time of the narrative. Okay. All right, then going to 20, I'm going to read 20 through 23. No more shall an infant from there live but a few days, nor an old man who has not fulfilled his days, for the children shall die 100 years old, but the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be cursed. All right. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree, so shall the days of my people, and my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth children for trouble, for they shall be the descendants of the blessed of the Lord, and their offspring with them. All right, I'm going to go back over that, but I want to read it in its fullness, and I'm going to pick things out of there of points that I would like to make. So the overall point is the new heaven and earth is not of a spiritual and or eternal state. And I'm going to go through there and pick out things that would attest to that statement. All right, so going back down. All right, so I said it's not spiritual and it's not eternal. Because, okay, first thing, we have infants. The word infant. Unless we got baby Cupid with arrows shooting, that is not accurate, okay? That cannot mean a spiritual thing. Infant is a natural thing. We got a child shall die. So if this is the eternal thing, nobody should be dying. All right? If this is a spiritual thing, but the sinner being 100 years old shall be accursed. Can't be spiritual or eternal if you got sinners being accursed. They shall build houses. If this is the eternal thing, I don't really want to dive into this, but I think I have to say this. The houses are supposed to already be prepared. If you know what I'm alluding to, then that's fine. If not, when I get to it, I will say it again in what I'm alluding to. But if this is eternal or spiritual, nobody should be building houses and inhabiting them. Nobody should be planting vineyards and eating the fruit. Oh, yeah. And also, in that eternal state, from my previous understanding, there should be no marriage or no having children. But when you look in 23, it says, for they shall be the descendants of the blessed Lord and their offspring with them. So that means they're still having kids. So that is that point, and there's also a point within that point that I want to bring out before I close that point out. All this right here is just talking about if you go back to Deuteronomy or Devarim 20:28, he says that the curses will come upon you, and you will not eat of your land. Other people will eat it. You will build, and other people will inhabit. So this is saying that he's bringing them out of that cursed state. He's saying that they shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. The curse was that somebody else going to be eating your food. I think Brother Mercy spoke to this last show talking about we're not reaping the fruits of our labor. This is what the blessing is. So he's in this. He's saying he's removing the curses and he's going to place blessings upon them. And with that, I will close out my point. And like I said, I open the floor before we move on to the next chapter for anybody to speak on anything that I said.
All right. Was that your last point?
Yes, it was my last point.
All right, good stuff. I'm in agreement with where you were going and also alluding. This is the reset button. Excuse me, y'all. This is the reset button, and we are, not purposely trying to reset, but we're allowing the text to do the resetting. If anyone has anything to say or add, comment, question, then press 1 to get in the queue.
Please don't hold nothing back, please. Because that was heavy for me when I read it. I just would love to hear feedback, any little thing, any minute, you know what I'm saying? Dang. There we go. We got Brother Mercy in the queue. Anybody else? I mean, just any thoughts on this would be appreciated, just in my assessment of this. I didn't put everything out there, but I'm going to hold it. But, if you see anything or you are, it's something that boggles your mind, you got a question, you want to let it out, we definitely have a little time to talk about it. So, all right. We got Brother Mercy in the queue. You want me to let him in?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Brother Mercy, you live.
Yeah, brothers. I heard two Christians arguing one time about this verse about the the wolf and the lamb grazing together. Okay. They said the wolf and lamb would graze together, but only the wolf would get up. That's what one person said. I thought that was pretty interesting. The lion shall eat straw like the ox.
You gotta say that again, Brother Mercy. You sound kind of far, like maybe your mouthpiece is away from your mouth or something, or on the head. We can't hear you.
And then it says that the wolf and lamb shall graze together, and the lion shall eat straw with like the ox. And then it says the serpent, and thus shall be the serpent's food. They shall now hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. I think that's kind of interesting and symbolic because the wolf and lamb, the wolf eats the lamb, right? But they shall graze together. I thought that was pretty interesting. It seems to be a peaceful situation that Isaiah described.
I mean, and I agree with that. I believe it's very symbolic. I don't think it's literal, like they're going to a wolf is going to be chilling with a lamb. I believe it speaks to the situation of the restoration of peace.
But what I think I see in this is Yahshua described wolves in his day, and he described sheep in his day. And to me, what this means is that the wolf and the sheep shall graze together, mean there shall be hypocrites that study Torah who are the wolves, and then there will be the righteous who study Torah, and they will be the lamb, and they shall graze together. That's what I'm seeing in this. They talk about what they shall eat. They're not necessarily saying they go. I just don't see peace here. I see their food source being the same, if that makes sense. The hypocrites are using the same Torah that we're using. And that's what I'm hearing in what Isaiah is saying. It's a terrible thing when your enemy uses the same book you use. Like, for example, when they talked about Noah, or not Noah, when they had said that Canaan was cursed, and they said that's why black people were cursed. This lie was told for hundreds of years that black people were cursed because Canaan was cursed, and they said all black people were descendants of Canaan. So you got the wolf using the same, he grazing off the same stuff that we're eating from, and he's twisting it so that we will lie down together. But the thing is, I see so much symbolism in this, but we gotta be real careful with it because I'm just not ready to lay down with a wolf. I'm not ready to do it. And so I know the wolf is just grazing in his deception. He has ulterior motives. I'm pretty sure he does. But the thing is, if you're wise, you can graze together with the wolf and survive if you're wise. But, as the Japanese do, when they bow to each other, they still looking at each other. If you know anything about Kung Fu, when they bow to each other, they still looking at each other. But, yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
I want to comment, and I'm simply going to comment by reading something within this text. And it says, verse 17, can you mute the mic for me, because I'm not by my iPhone. But it says, for behold, I am creating new heavens and a new earth. The former events will no longer be recalled and will not be taken to heart. So they put in little brackets, they put the events in those brackets. Only rejoice and be happy forever for what I am creating. For behold, I am creating Jerusalem as gladness, and its people as joy. For I will rejoice over Jerusalem and exalt with my people, and there will no longer be heard in its sound of weeping and the sound of outcry. Never will be brought from there a young child or old man who will not fill out his days. So I only want to read the rest of that. The point that I'm making or bringing out is, I think in subject sense that what Mercy is bringing out is good. I think that's a good lesson. I think that's good advice to really pay attention to, like what you brought out, what Yeshua brought into that subject, because I think that was a different subject matter, by the way. And even today, we have to be careful. But as far as in context with this, I believe this is talking about an age of peace. So as far as the lamb and the wolf, I mean, we see examples of that today. We see animals that you would think that shouldn't be together, being together, and it becomes a beautiful thing when we look at it, because it's like, wow, if they can be together, you know what I'm saying? That's amazing. That displays some type of peace. That displays some type of, we can get along. We got dogs and cats laying with each other, you know what I'm saying, and things like that. But I think that in this, the symbolization, as far as in this text, is speaking of peace. That's just my take, based off of the textual information we have here. Just verse 19 alone, I believe it brings it out. Let me see. Let me keep going. When you look at even verse 23, it's just talking about a period of time where it's like no struggle in a sense, So that's just my take. But again, I believe what he brought out is definitely needed to be paid attention to, and I think that's the reason why in the Brit Chadashah, the New Testament, is why Yeshua was saying that, because he was dealing with, in that particular time, in that subject, those type of people in that subject matter. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I just want to say, because I don't want the point that, I brought out prior to be lost. So I just want to go back, because what you're saying kind of complements the point that I was bringing out, is that when you look at it in context of the new heaven and new earth concept, that is what he's saying. He's restoring the former Jerusalem. In context, I just read the state of Jerusalem. I brought that point out to where it's desolate, the temple is destroyed, there is violence, they're oppressed, they're in captivity, the land is definitely not in a state of peace. They have foreigners trampling the Holy Land, what they attribute as the Holy Land. In context, he's saying he's restoring that, and he's going to create a new. He also talk about weeding out the unrighteous, so it doesn't continue the generational curses or the generational sin, transgression that has been going on within the context of what we've been reading, even from Malachim, what we was reading in Kings. So we, in my mind, just reading it, like I said, from the narrative perspective, we've seen what has happened leading up to this. We've seen what has been talked about leading up to this about restoration. We know the current state of the people and the land because he's been talking about this restoration for about 6 chapters now. Now this is the very end. We're leading to the end of Yeshayahu or Isaiah's narrative, and he's talking about this new heaven, new earth, which is the new Jerusalem, which I am showing that it is not a spiritual or eternal thing. It is simply renewing the covenant, because we saw that. We read about that. He said, I'm going to make a covenant with the people. He's renewing the covenant. We said it's not a new. Brother Mercy said that. It's not a new covenant. He's renewing the covenant, which would put them back in the land, because that's what the covenant originally said, that he would, they would get the land of milk and honey, so on and so forth. So, like I said, those curses we see because he said you will eat of your fruit. When he broke down the curses of if they didn't keep the covenant, they would not eat of their fruit. They would not eat the fruit of their labor. Somebody else would come in and do that. They would be oppressed. They would be driven out of the land. We've seen the curses put on them. We see speech being spoken of the curses being removed or reversed, which would entail that the covenant is renewed. Things are being put back in place. That's like you renewing your contract. When your contract is up, those things are removed from you. Like, let's say you have a basketball contract. It entails that you have a endorsement here, endorsement there. When that contract, you lose your endorsements, all these things, and then you renew it. Okay, now we're going to bring this endorsement back. You're going to have this. You're going to have that. All the things that were listed originally in that contract, you now have the right, or those things are exercised and granted to you. So that's what I'm seeing. That's my major point in all of this, that is what this narrative is about at the end of the day. that's I'm a relinquish the floor for anybody to say anything else. But I just want the listeners to understand that is the point of, or that is the picture that I got and that I am presenting to them to look at and make the decision on what they, if they see the same thing. If they don't, that's none of my concern, I guess. But I am laying out all the facts so you can see from my point of view, but it's up to you to see that. I'm not going to force it on you. And we have 2 in the queue. I don't think Mercy ever left, though. But I will open your mic, Mercy, after I open Sister Hokma, I believe this is. You're live, Sister Hokma.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys. I did not mean to press 1. I don't know how I got into 1. So I don't have any questions today. I'm here in body and not in spirit, so I really don't have any questions today.
All right.
Sorry.
Is anything that you've heard thus far, spark anything? Or
just because where I'm at today, I don't want to seem biased or anything, so I'm pretty sure I have tons of things I could talk about as far as the heaven and the new earth. When you had brought that up, I had to do some resetting because of Christianity, but I didn't have to do it today because I already was looking into the heavens and the new earth. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not walking. So, but that is a reset for me, period, anyway, because a lot of my beliefs became disbelief. So that's all I can say for y'all today.
All right, appreciate it, sis.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna mute your mic, Brother Mercy. I'm gonna open your mic. I don't know if you press 1, Sister Hokma, if you would press 1. Thank you, Brother Mercy, alive.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, let's go to your contract example, Jedediah. When a contract is renewed, then that means now you still got to do the obligations. You have to go to practice. And you have to work by the sweat of your brow when you go to practice, because all basketball players are going to sweat when they go to practice, right? So it doesn't mean that the labor is over. Matter of fact,
I never said that. Just so it's understood. So I don't know if you're saying I said that, but that never came out of my mouth.
No, that's not what I said. I'm using your example.
He was just making a point. I think he was just making a point.
Yeah, I wanted to quote you. I was using your example. I said, your example.
So you elaborating on what I'm saying. Okay.
Right. You said you gave the example of player on contract. And what I'm saying to you is in that example, when you renew that contract, that player then has to go to practice and has to sweat. So, it's still labor involved because your contract got things stipulated. And I wanted to piggyback on verse 20. It says here, no more in verse 20 shall there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not fill out his days, for the young man shall die 100 years old, and the sinner 100 years old shall be accursed. So we still got curses. We still got people dying.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So, all I'm saying is we got people dying. We got people cursed. I'm just showing you stuff that you don't hear about this new heaven and new earth. You know, they think it's blessed. You know what I mean?
That's why I said it's not an eternal thing. It's not a spiritual thing. So that was also, you know, the point I was trying to make, that, you know, this concept of a new heaven, new earth is simply the restoration of Jerusalem during the narrative. So it can continue to be new heavens and new earth. You know what I'm saying? Like, anytime something's restored, that's the concept of that phrase, new heaven, new earth.
And when Adam had sinned, what happened? Yahweh had said he shall work by the sweat of his brow. So the sweat of the brow don't end with the new heaven and the earth if we renew the contract.
Right.
It don't end. You still got to sweat. But I just want to say, Christians don't talk about this. They don't tell this side of the story. That you still, I mean, so when I renew your contract, that means now you under what you had before. So you got to come to practice. You got to, I mean, yeah, you lost your endorsements, and you might not get them back. Endorsements don't have to, you know, endorsements are not really part of the contract. So they don't have to endorse you again. You know, that just depends on what they want to do. But, you know,
I was saying if that's within the contract is what I'm saying. So when we go back and we read the original contract, like you said, there is no new contract. There's just a renewed contract. So you are under the same contract that was set from the beginning. So that contract, when he renewed that means it's the same contract. You signing, all you doing is extending the contract or renewing the contract because you broke a clause that was in there.
That's
and
right.
Now you broke the clause, so therefore you were removed from the contract. So that's when the curses come in. Because in the contract it say you're going to pay these fines. So
that's
now
right.
you're paying fines, you broke the contract, and now, okay, we got to renew the contract because you just totally went against what the contract was.
Uh-huh.
So now let's try this again. You know what I'm saying? Let's try this again. These are the terms of the contract. All right? I'm going to give you another chance. I'm going to renew everything. Because guess what? In the contract, you didn't. It was utilities were included in the rent. Okay, I cut your water off because you wasn't paying rent. So that was a curse. Now you ain't got no water. You know what I'm saying? I cut your electricity off. You can't use the facilities that come with it. I took your little card that you swipe in to go to the fitness room. You can't use it. You know? So now, okay, I'm going to give you back your card. Your water's on. Your electricity on. The house is good now. So go back in the house. Let's try this again. That's what I see.
That is so true. That is so true, Jedediah. But people think this new heaven and earth means it's going to be blissful and it's not going to be nothing. You know, I think they got a misconception. You know, this new heaven and earth, there's going to be people dying. I mean, he talked about people dying now. So,
right.
I mean,
that's why I said it's not an eternal. They think, you know, and I believe it's just a misconception of, you know, that's why it's very important to go through the Tanakh first. Because this is where the origin's supposed to be. So if the latter doesn't match the foundation in some way, we know that, okay, it's something. Something is off. So now what I have to do is reconcile. If it doesn't reconcile, I have to go with the original manuscript of the foundational understanding. This is the foundational understanding of heaven and earth. So we see death. So if you teaching, there's no death in the new heaven and the new earth. There is no, you know, if you get to teaching that, it is going against the foundational basis of the Tanakh. And that's my point. So, like you said, that misconception, wherever it came from, it is still a misconception. Because we see clearly in the text, it talks about death. It talks about you still going to be planting and eating. So the sweat of your brow, you still have to, and it's a natural thing. You're not just going to be floating around in the New Jerusalem, okay? These are physical bodies. These are people, bodies that can die. There are sinners. So the sinners are not chilling in the lake of fire. Where is that at in the text, in context? I don't see that. Maybe it's later. I don't know. Only time will tell.
So, I got a question for you. Jedediah.
Yeah.
If you got sinners in this new heaven and new earth, if you got sinners, why in the world would a lamb lay next to a wolf if you got sinners? That don't make sense. He's talking about one particular area. That's his mountain.
Yeah. And it's peace. And this is talking about Jerusalem. It has nothing to do with the rest of the world. This is specifically for the people in the narrative going back to their land. And that's why I say the context there has... Say again?
That's the thing going on.
I couldn't hear you.
Because, man, when you got sinners, you got problems.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I'm saying. The things are happening. It's still continuing. And where there's sin, there's curse. It said the old men will be accursed. And there's still a separation showing that all Yisrael doesn't have to be cursed if you're doing what you're supposed to do. So many of the points are being shown within this little context of these chapters. That many people teach these things that, all Israel was cursed. Or all Israel is still cursed or has to be cursed or whatever. But that is not what the context of the narrative is telling me. Because I've heard people tell people like, if you're not cursed, if you say you're not cursed, you're not Israel. Now, you may suffer some things, like I said, these generational curses, but when salvation comes, because this is what this is all about, the salvation. When salvation comes, salvation has to come, but I'm going to bring more of this out in the next chapter. I appreciate the commentary, Brother Mercy. I'm going to mute your mic. We got one in the queue. I want to make sure we let them in, and then we'll move on to the next chapter. And if you want to come back, just press 1. So your mic is muted. Press 1. All right, you're out the queue. Thank you. All right, Sister Chokmah, you're alive.
Okay, I had a question about the covenant. So when the renewed covenant, so how does one, because we don't, as far as me, you, and everyone on the show today, we didn't go sign no covenant, right? So we making a verbal covenant to the Most High. Is that correct?
Yes. So basically, this covenant is with the nation. Okay.
The nation.
Like we say, we always say, what exactly is a nation? Okay. We say we're a nation of people, but we're not operating in the attributes of a nation. So we cannot, therefore, call ourselves, we have a nationality, but that is not the same concept of being a nation. A nation functions as a nation. If we cannot function as a nation, which means, as I said in my song, we need to build this nation so we could legislate, but instead of us coming together, we rather segregate. So we are not a nation. So we cannot have a national covenant, because that's what the Most High established, a national covenant. There are covenants that he made with individuals in the past that led up to the national covenant, but we are specifically speaking of the national covenant in this narrative. That's why he's saying, because we see there's a location that is tied to it. There's a location. People are operating, like Brother Mercy said, they're reaping the fruits of their labor as a unit of people. There is cities that belong to them, so on and so forth. So I think people confuse the essence of the covenant spoken of and established through Moses, opposed to whatever else they're thinking of. It's different. You can have a relationship with the Most High. The forefathers before Moshe came into play had a relationship with the Most High. They made covenants with the Most High. The Most High made covenants. That's why you have different types of covenants. You have the Davidic covenant, Mosaic covenant. You have the Abrahamic covenant. So you can personally make a covenant with the Most High, and it'll be personal between you and the Most High. But the national covenant with Israel is what is in question with this narrative, not anything else other than that. So I don't know if that answers your question. I believe it does.
Well, it was a twofold, because I wanted to, my next question was, either way, yes or no, but I was going to ask, how do you come out of that covenant? So you know how when we were in the traditional church, we was like, I gave my life back to Christ. Then, 3 months later, you come back and it's like, I'm coming to rededicate my life back to Christ. It's like, how do you come out of that covenant, into that covenant, out of that covenant, into that covenant? So that was my next question. But when you said we make our own personal covenant with the Most High, I guess, whatever it is, when you broke it, then you're out of that covenant. Is that correct?
Right. And
okay.
You renew, like you said, I want to reestablish, rededicate. All these terms are of a reestablishment. So renew, you reestablish, you rededicate, you do all these things. Basically, you're trying.
Let me jump in. Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, the covenant is there. The covenant is solid. Whether you adhere to the covenant, that's a different situation. So it's there. The covenant was made. The agreement was made. He made a covenant on Mount Sinai with them, right? Told them, will you do all this? They said they will. They was breaking it in the process after that, but the covenant still remained. It was signed. It was there. That's why he would say, come back, turn, repent. That's you, like you just said, Sister Hawkma, rededicating to it. So it's still there. You personally are just turning back and coming back to what you originally made. That doesn't go anywhere. So lastly, I'll say, and let him continue with the floor, is kind of like when you're born. A kid is born into a family that's in Judaism or Hebrew Israelites or Christianity or a Muslim. They're born into it. It was passed to them. They are already in it because of their ancestors or their parents or X, Y, and Z. It was a traditional thing passed along, so they're already in it off birth. And that aspect in a different type of setting that I'm bringing out right now. So the covenant is there. That's made. It doesn't move. You are the one that moves. Point blank. Basically, guess I'm trying to say. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's exactly right with it, and it doesn't move. So, it can be represented to you. That's like when you have that, and you say, "Man, I want to rededicate." That is the Most High bringing that to your remembrance, and that you have now the opportunity to reestablish that covenant that you made with the Most High. Now, I do want to make sure that we keep the covenant of the nation separate than any personal covenants, because it is separate. He made it with the children as a unit. It was a national covenant. So we also have to understand that these, the difference between those. And that's why sometimes when people do certain things and it don't fit what your covenant with the Most High is, because it is a personal covenant rather than the national covenant. But the national covenant stands with the nation. But we have to get back to it. We have to get back to being a nation before we can step fully into that national covenant, if that makes sense.
So yes, it does. So are you saying that there's two questions? There's no one in that nation, so there's no one fulfilling covenant. The Father kept he still got his end of the bargain. But you're telling me no one is in this nation? Because as far as over here. Go ahead.
Right. So what I'm saying when he said gather yourselves, and then in the context of saying that I'm going to renew this covenant, you see he's gathering them. I will gather you from the four corners. Gather yourselves, and he's going to bring them back, because part of the covenant was the land. Part of the covenant was the land. He brought them out of Mitzrayim and took them to a land, and he established his covenant with them. And there were some things that they had to do. Real quick, we got 90 seconds. If anybody's listening online and wants to continue in the dialogue, dial in. It's 516-595. 8238 again. 516-595-8238. All right. So with that said, there is a difference. I just want to make sure that we understand that there is a difference, because I think the biggest confusion is that, and we're putting the cart before the horse. We have to gather ourselves. We have to establish ourselves as a nation before we can have a national covenant. Even with the whole setup, you know what I mean? But you can have a personal relationship, a personal covenant, a personal agreement with the Most High. And that's why I say don't make a vow as well to the Most High and not keep it. So that vow is an agreement. It's a covenant. So if you say, Lord, I'm not going to do this again, that's you vowing to the Most High that you're not going to do that. So but nationally, when we can legislate and all that, then people will be held accountable for certain things. Like right now, we can't render the punishments or the judgments because we don't legislate. We don't regulate our own judicial system. So all these things come into play. So that's when it comes into, okay, this is what I have established with, with the Most High, and this is where I am on my level with the Most High. But nationally, people try to operate nationally. They try to judge you nationally, but they can't literally judge you according to the way that the Bible was set up for the nation. So that's where I'm going with it. Even with like Mercy, like I always joke with Mercy, go ahead and do that sacrifice and see what happens, because he probably go to jail unless he goes to a secluded area where nobody knows what he's doing. But here in this land, you can't do that. So just like Moshe and them, they had to leave the land of Mizraim to practice their practices, which I'm also going to get into that in the next chapter.
I want to jump in real quick. I want to comment on that last part he said. First of all, that was my point as far as like with the birth thing, like us being born into it. It's there, that's set, that doesn't move. Like he was adding to that too, or I was adding to that. But as far as the sacrificing thing, interestingly, they actually allow it in Israel. I forgot what area it was, but me and you saw the video. I think you saw the video, of it was a Passover, and it was some of our brothers. They each year they go down there, they do to the T what the Torah say to do with the lamb. They even comfort the lamb before the lamb died, all that stuff. They was doing it on, it was a video about it. Maybe I'll share it if I can find it. I'll share it in his Thought One's talk radio group. Matter of fact, I'm going to make sure I do after the show. So over here you can, like he said, but for some reason, I forgot what part of Israel they were at, they allowed it. They allowed them to sacrifice that lamb. I'm talking about blood coming out, all that, hung upside down, everything, to the T. So I don't know what y'all take on that, what I just brought out.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, legally, they do that because they have their nation. They can decide to do that. And so when you ask if there's nobody who has that national covenant, I would have to say maybe the people over that's in the land are trying to uphold it. You know what I'm saying? Which it was always offered to strangers as well. So I'm not exactly opposed to, Israel over there in the actual land that's trying to uphold it. I'm not opposed to them doing that because, they more so fit the requirements of the covenant than we can. Like, we can't do everything, you know what I'm saying? We try to do it, but once again, I would more so contribute that to a individual covenant because we're not all doing it together as it was written. So, and I'm not saying that you can't do stuff. So that's why I'm saying we have to understand or differentiate between the two. Understanding, okay, this is what I can do, this is what I will do, that's your covenant. But from a national standpoint, it requires the whole nation because that is what is written. And if you can't fulfill that, then you can't say that you're walking in the national covenant. So that's I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to, go. We can definitely bring this back up, on a rest show or something like that. But I'll end it there. Brother Mercy in the queue. Brother Mercy, please make it quick. I'm going to mute your mic, Sister Chokmah. Brother Mercy, you're live. Please make it brief. And then so we can go ahead and finish this last chapter. Brother Mercy, you're live.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, because I was going to say real quick, that was an excellent point, as far as from a personal and national covenants and agreements, because the thing is, like you said, on a national level, we can't do certain things. And even Yeshua, that's why he didn't stone. That's another reason why he didn't stone that woman, because the Pharisees was trying to get him to stone her to impart Jewish law when the Romans were in power. So Yahshua was wise enough to know, hey, look, I'm not going to stone this woman, not just because it was an illegal setup and it was a circus court, but also I'm not going to implement the law of Moses here because if I do, the Romans. So we got to be wise. We got to know the difference between national and personal, and that's it. I'm done.
I want to add something too. That's a good.
Okay.
That's a good part or piece to the puzzle. Another piece to the puzzle is I would say he didn't stone her also because they didn't bring the man as well. Because in the law you have to bring both parties in order to. That's a part of that. Whatever took place, that adultery type thing or whatever that was taking place. They didn't bring both the man and the woman. So I think he was looking at that too. You know what I'm saying? Like, or maybe they was trying to set him up to see if he would, or see how much he did know. I love that topic of that example you brought out. I always spoke on that topic when discussing that with people. But he didn't. If they would have brought that man, I wonder what would have happened. I don't know. That's it.
All right. Sister Hokma, if you could press 1. I don't know if you've been trying to push it or not. So you can come out the queue and come back whenever you want to. But we're going to move on to the last final chapter. I did want to say that I appreciate the feedback from Brother Mercy. That was just something that came. Let me see something. Sister Hokma, did you?
Yes, I wasn't done.
Okay.
You had muted
right.
me. Okay, so another thing you had mentioned was salvation. So, and you guys were talking about, I think you said, I told you my body and mind is I'm half here, half not here, about salvation in the New Jerusalem. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around that because, I still have some Christianity thought process of that. So the salvation is going to be when we all when they all go to New Jerusalem, because we ain't going. So when they all go to New Jerusalem, that's when the salvation is?
So the main thing is for that narrative. For the narrative that we're reading of Isaiah,
okay,
he's bringing them back to Jerusalem. That is what.
Okay.
That is what the context is telling us, that he's speaking to them. He's not mysteriously speaking to us. Okay. He's telling them, but that was the original covenant. So in my mind, if you're going to be a part of this national covenant, the ideal is to go to the land that he said you have to uphold these things. Like Brother Shema said, if sacrificial law is to be upheld, the only place that I know you could do that, according to what's written in the book, is in the land, in a specific location. Everything else is just acknowledgement from our standpoint. You hear people say, well, I tried to do this. You know what I'm saying? Which I don't knock people for trying to do anything, but at the same point, you're not doing what is inscribed in the scripture. So at the end of the day, I would just attribute that to a personal thing between you and the Most High. So you can't try to tell me I have to do what you do. That's you and the Most High. Did you tell the Most High this is what you're going to do? Did you make a covenant with the Most High? Because it's not the covenant that was passed down through Moshe. So we all have our own, things that we may try to do to fulfill certain things, but I wouldn't say that I'm fulfilling the national covenant. That's me, though. anybody else could feel how they want to feel, but just Yedidiah or Jedediah, that's my understanding. So, if people say that, I don't jump down their throat or anything like that, but if we have a dialogue, I definitely will render my understanding to them, and they could take it or they could leave it. You know what I'm saying? But that's my understanding. People could feel that they're keeping the Mosaic covenant or law or whatever. There's parts in there that you can personally do outside of the land, but you can't keep it in its whole totality of what it inscribes or entails from a standpoint of a nation, because you're not set up as a nation, so you can't do that. You know what I'm saying? You're not in the land to do it. You know what I'm saying? He said that this is what you will do, blah, blah, blah. So all those things, you can't leave certain things out and say you're keeping something. You're keeping that specific one, but that's on a personal level. So that's my understanding. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I was going to go into when you had, I think Brother Mercy was talking about the sinners going to be in the New Jerusalem, but now that I know it has nothing to do with my Christianity mindset, I'm done.
Yeah, so we got to, the big thing for us is keeping things in context. So in context, like I said, the Most High didn't stop speaking. The Most High is still speaking. There's many, like Brother Mercy say, we don't have any actual prophets right now that actually, act in the nature of what we see in ancient times that's saying, hey, this is what the Most High is saying we need to do. Some people do proclaim certain things and say these things, but prophecy now, from a Christian standpoint, is not based off of what the ancient was, because the prophets spoke for the Most High to the nation. Sometimes they would speak to individuals, but it was always a national mindset of a prophet, you know what I'm saying? Because that's what the covenant was. So they would speak to the covenant. Now, sometimes they would speak to individuals because that individual was within the nation. So there were some individual things that need to be said to certain people. But it was always, you would always see in the text as we've been going, and we'll continue to see, there were national situations that needed to be handled as right now, like they're in captivity. So it spoke to them as like, okay, y'all need to assemble yourself. Y'all need to, basically, I'm going to weed out the people that are wicked, that doesn't need to affect the nation as the generations go by as well. So, like with us, like Brother Mercy, you got people in private, but you don't see a lot of people out there actually before the nation saying, hey, we got to weed these people out, or, or saying, this is, the Lord said that these people got to be this or that, or whatever, like we see in the narrative. We don't see that in today's age. It's more so, hey, keep these laws, statutes, and commandments. Though that is said in the scriptures, is more than that. How do we regroup? How do we, what is the end state? Nobody's really talking about that. Nobody's talking about, do we go back to the land? Some people has left and went to the land. There's actually a place set up, the Mona, Israel, that are full of us. It's a little community. These are things that like Brother Mercy
Yep,
said.
like 3,000 people there. I think it's like 3,000 people. A little bit between 2,000 and 3,000 of us there.
Right.
So,
I just wanted
now,
to jump in and
see
say
how
that.
you just said it's 3,000 of us there, right? And someone had reached out to me. I think I had just started messing. Anyway, I think I had just started coming to the Talk One about coming there. And so, considering we are, I'm not going to say every individual, but a lot of us are well-versed. And the people that's over there now, the 3,000, I'm pretty sure they are all versed. So do you guys think that we should be careful who we let into the land? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Well, see, and there you go again. Like I said, in context, we look at things. I like to keep it contextual. I like to keep the narrative where the narrative is, but we also see that is relative to our situation. So I also consider that too. So even when you see the restored Jerusalem, new heaven, new earth, you see there's still sinners there. You're not going to get away from sinners.
No, but...
So
okay.
The thing is, we must separate ourselves from sinners, and the Most High will deal with them accordingly.
And I want to say this too. You got to remember the people that's over there, that's 2,000 or whatever, 2,000 or 3,000. They still don't have, like, I want to say what he would say, like a jurisdiction type thing. That is the land of the people that's occupying it. We're just over there. That ain't even restored as our land yet. That's, and my brother Mercy, brother Yediyah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I'm right. It's not our government over there. They just allowed us to have citizenship over there in the moment. So that plays a part, I believe, as well. With that, I yield.
And he's exactly right. And the thing about that is, I see Brother Mercy in the queue. All right, this is gonna be the last little run because we gotta finish this last chapter. But I will say that he's exactly right. It's kind of just like over here. It'll be the same situation. Only there's the laws will be a little more. It'll be different. The laws will be different than it is in the United States. So that's the only difference. And so therefore you can exercise a little more of the book than you would be able to over here.
Exactly. They let you do a little bit of more of the culture of the ancestors than the book because they're already over there doing it as well.
Right, and they hold and to speak to, like, they are totally different than the Hebrews over here. They are like the culture, like he said, the culture as a whole is more enriched over there than it is here. And the last thing I want to say is that this also speaks to the necessity to actually be cultured. Because if there's any hope of us becoming into the governmental system because it's headed by the people who inherit the land, we have to, just like we had to here, get on their level. And when I mean that, I mean like you can't be the head of Israel and don't speak Ivrit. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what the most of the people speak over there.
Thank you.
You can't infuse yourself into the governmental system just like Obama. Now, people have their opinions about Obama. That's fine. I have my own. But that's not about that has nothing to do with my point. My point is before you say that, I'm so sorry. I got to say something real quick, and then I'm gonna let you continue. Think of Joseph. Did he speak the language of the Egyptians? I'm done.
Go ahead.
Of course he did. And he had to get himself on a level. Now, his gifts help him excel.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Even over there, they're flourishing. You know what I'm saying? Because they're gifts. Ben Blackwell, you know, he's a musician. You know, he's getting a lot of recognition. So that's bringing eyes on to that. I mean, not saying the stuff that we do over here is not bringing recognition to the movement that we're trying to do, but at the same time, the ultimate goal, what is the ultimate goal? I have not heard that yet. So these are things that need to be talked about. Like I said, we could do a rest show. I hope this was satisfying to your question, some of the things that we have said. We must move on, though. So I'll definitely write this down as a rest show topic.
Okay.
I'm going to mute your mic, Sister Hokma.
Didn't you say Brother Mercy had something to say too?
Brother Mercy was in the queue. I'm going to open his mic. Brother Mercy, you live. He went out of the queue, though. Brother Mercy, you live.
Yeah, what I was going to say, I'm going to be 30 seconds. I got off the queue because I didn't want to take him too much time. But, yeah, you brothers are right on. The thing is, that land over there, we got to learn Hebrew if you want to survive, just like we had to learn English over here. But I just want to say the black people over there are definitely being mistreated. They're getting proportionally more of them are getting incarcerated than over here. I just wanted to say that. So there are problems over there. You might get the culture, but you might get arrested. So I'm out.
And I want to add to that he's right. That's what I think in the Mona community. I think that's a community that they really don't bother from a standpoint of. He's right though. I'm not going against what he said, by the way, y'all, because they are getting mistreated. But I think within the community of the Mona, it's not. I don't live there. I only could go off of what I'm seeing, you know, because I have been looking at it. I mean, I've been actually looking at some of the stuff because, you know, like Ben Blackwell we're talking about. He's lived there his whole life. You know, I'm actually getting taught by a native speaker right now who just moved here in the middle of last year. She's been there since she was 7. So, you know, her family still stay out there. You know, we know a guy by the name of Yadon Keys who does my crystals and stuff, my stones. They live out there, family and everything, but they in that community. So it's a certain community that's not being bothered in that sense, but he is dead on. You go outside that community, I can only imagine, you know.
Good stuff, good points. Definitely something we could talk about later. But we're going to move on to this last chapter, try to get through it. We have about 36 minutes. So I'm going to start this off. And Brother Shemai will come in after my first point. All right, so as we continue from the last chapter, you know, we talked about the metaphor of peace. We talked about the restoration that's happening, that he's speaking of, that's supposed to come forth. And then we go into 66. Now, 66 was special to me because I told Shemai, I said, man, I got to start off 66. He said, why? You know, I can imagine what you're going to come with. So it was very special to me when I read it. Reason being because y'all all know I talk about, you know, one of my little slogans is reality over religion. So when I read this, it really spoke of a reality check to the people from Yod He Waw He. And so in my first point, when I was reading, it seems that there was a separation being made between reality and religion, starting in verses 1 and 2. So that'll be my first point, and then I have another point after that, after Shema speaks. So this first point, like I said, is in 1 through 2. It says, "Thus says the Lord, heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool. Where is the house that you will build for me? Where is the place of my rest? For all things my hand has made, and all those things exist, says the Lord. But on this one will I look." Now I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to get too far into that, because that goes into my next point. The part that I wanted to elaborate on for my first point, though, is that there is no literal house for the Lord. So I know people might not. I'm gonna say it how I'm gonna say it, but I just want to make sure that people understand what I'm saying. So in my mind, by him saying that, because we remember in previous chapters, previous books that we've went over already, they built the Most High house. But it was their desire to build a house for the Most High. Again, this goes with this personal relationship thing. Okay? Dawid wanted to build a house, but his son was the one who built it, which was the temple, which is now destroyed. So, in essence, the Most High is homeless, if you want to look at it like that, because the temple is destroyed. But that is just a religious or traditional concept of the Most High living in a house, because the reality of it, which he's making a distinction and a separation, is that heaven is his throne and earth is his footstool. You can't literally build a Most High house. You can't literally build him a place of rest. But religiously and traditionally, they did. And the Most High respected that on a personal level. So that's what that was in my mind, and according to what I'm reading. Again, I would love feedback on it. That speak wonders to me, that there is a separation between traditional or religious practice and concepts and what is real, which is reality, the reality of a situation, which he's not saying anything wrong, or, because he wouldn't accept it if it wasn't okay. He allowed him to build a house for him, which wasn't his literal house, but this is religiously, traditionally, what was acceptable according to their culture. So with this separation, this is something that was already a seed planted in me, but now this is like I see it flourishing with this beginning of this chapter. So that's all I have right now. I will come back to some other points. It's on you, Brother Shema.
Man, I've been talking the whole time. I forgot I had my phone muted. So, like I said, he more than likely is going to go over some of the things I have. So I'm not going to go into my whole deep Shema spiel. I'm going to tread a little lightly. But what I want to do, what I want to bring out is it's a certain connection that Yah wanted from us, right? You know, when you look at, I'm going to read it. Verse 3. I want to go down all the way to verse 4, only just for context purposes to bring out my point. So I'm not going to hit each verse one by one or nothing like that. It's kind of to have a collective body or a collective idea of what I'm trying to present. So he who slaughters an ox is as if he slays a man. He who offers a sheep is as if he breaks a dog's neck. He who brings up a meal offering is as if he offers a swine's blood. He who brings a frankincense remembrance is as if he brings a gift of wickedness. Now, real quick, I'm going to stop there before I get down to the end of verse 4. You would look at this and you would say, well, wait, I thought it was okay. I thought that this is what he desired. I thought that this is what he allowed. And sure enough, we do know that he did. This is what, well, not the swine part. Well, no, that was a comparison, sorry. As though Yah had brought out, right? So the next verse, keep reading. They have even chosen their ways, and their souls have desired their abominations. That is the key of it. You know, when you see a lot of Christianity speaking on, you know, the law and that stuff, he didn't want that, but that's not true. What he wanted and always have been pressing with Israel is for them to operate in his thoughts. You know, not from a standpoint of not thinking on your own. You know, you can do that. But from a righteous standpoint, we tend to, when we know we should go right, we go left. You know, that aspect of it. Verse 4, I too will choose to mock them, and what they dread I will bring upon them. Why? What is he talking about? I too will choose to mock them, because you are mocking the Most High when, first of all, you said you're going to do what he asked, what he commanded. You know, and and then you sit up here doing these things that he did tell us or allow us and tell us to do, but yet you haven't changed your thought process. You're still choosing to do your ways, what your desires is, which is an abomination towards the Most High. So you're mocking him. That is what he's saying. You know, because I called, but no one responded. I spoke, but they did not hear. You know, he called you. He spoke these things in what direction we should go. You know, not you, I'm talking about them right here, but it could be here now too as well. But they chose, and we saw that with the idol tree and things leading up until this point, they chose to continue in the opposite direction of what the Most High prescribed. Only a remnant has done right in his eyes, and majority has done wrong. And that sounds crazy, right? You're like, man, but what am I supposed to do? Last part says, they did what is wrong. They did what is wrong in my eyes. And what I did not desire, they chose. It's kind of like if a father say, hey, to a daughter, or vice versa, to a son, but I'm going to use a daughter example. Hey, you should not date him. He's bad for you. You got a rebellious daughter, she going to still sneak and date him on the side. She ain't going to tell him, but she going to date him on the side. It's like it's in us to do this stuff. I mean, but that's a desire. That goes back 2 weeks ago when I did when we did the rest show on desiring. So they didn't desire to do what it is the Most High desired of them. They desired their own ways, just like the daughter desires to be with this boy that she's not seeing, that the father and the mother sees that he's no good. But it's her desire to be with him. That's all I got.
All right, good stuff. So I want to kind of, you know, he touched on the sacrifices and stuff and how their heart wasn't pure. I want to caveat on that before I move on. So just going back into the theme of what I was saying before, him separating the reality of something and the religious aspect of it. Because religion is just sometimes a repetitive thing. It's something that you just do repetitively. Even if your heart is not in the right spot, like you can do something repetitively just because it's a part of your religion. Shema, you tell me if that made sense, what I just said. But, like, you could religiously do something.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that is, like, you're conditioned to do it now. So you're conditioned to do it, but your heart is not in it.
Yeah, marriages too. That's all. I mean, that's everyday life.
Right.
People do that.
So that's religion to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or you do it because, like, you were introduced to it. You really don't even understand what you're doing.
Yep. There you
You're just doing it religiously. So that's why, I talk about reality over religion, because sometimes things done religiously is not the reality. It's just religion, which it's nothing wrong with having religion, but it's just not reality. So, going back into that theme, when we look at sacrifice and offerings, he talked about it, but he's showing this comparison, right, that he went through. The comparison is showing things being done that have been accepted versus things that are unacceptable. Grain offerings was acceptable according to the law of the National Covenant. But offering swine's blood was an abomination. Burning incense was acceptable if done according to the law. But blessing an idol was an abomination. As you continue to read at the end, it says, and their soul delights in their abominations. So all these things that are being compared with acceptable things that's being compared with abominations, and then he ends it in saying that soul delight in abominations. There's only two things to conclude. You either conclude that those things that they're doing are abominations, or when you go down to 4, he says, so I will choose their delusions, and I will bring their fears on them. So sometimes you could be delusional. And like I said, you could be religiously delusional. You think you're serving the Most High because you're keeping these religious practices when that ain't even the reality of the situation. He accepts sacrifices, and this is my conclusion. He accepts sacrifice and offering for righteousness. The key to righteousness is the condition of the heart. As you see in verse 3, he said, going back up to verse 2, he said, but on this one will I look, on him who is poor and of a contrite spirit, and who trembles at my word. That is what the essence of righteousness is built from, not sacrifices. So with that said, we see that this is explained by the Most High in the Tanakh. And you understand that he accepts sacrifice and offering, but it's not absolutely necessary for righteousness. This principle is right here. And I will yield right there with that point, and then pass the mic to you, Shema.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's what I'm saying with the remainder of this chapter. I really don't have any major points left to really bring out. Yeah, I really don't have any major points right now. I probably would do more commenting than anything else. Yeah, that's it. I'm looking through it right now. I really don't have any extra points. I know mine is more so in the towards the end, so I kind of want to wait until you get towards the end to bring out one last point. Hello.
Yeah, I was talking. Yeah, but I said I won't be long. I do have a couple more points. I won't be long. I'll try to make them short as I can. So, the second thing that I saw within this is the rebirth. We talked about the restoration. We talked about the renewed heaven. I'm going to say renewed heaven and earth, or renewed Jerusalem. So in this chapter, there's portions of it that alludes back to that in Isaiah 65 and 17 with the New Jerusalem concept, or renewed Jerusalem concept. So I call it, you know what I'm saying, the rebirth of a nation. That's basically what's happening. They wasn't a nation, so the covenant, couldn't be exercised as a national covenant. So he was dealing with individuals based on their lifestyles and the covenant that they personally had with him. But that covenant, like Shema said, still stood. So that it was still there. You know what I'm saying? They just had to fall back into it, which also had to be agreed upon or re-agreed upon with the Most High, because he's not the one that broke it. They broke it. So the Most High is the one that says, okay, yeah, we can renew this covenant. Or give them the opportunity to renew it. With that said, so the rebirth of a nation is pretty neat, because as I'm reading it, 6 through 13, there is a analogy of a woman birthing a child. So I kind of wanted to go through that and break down some of the things I saw. So starting at 6, it says, the sound of the noise from the city, a voice from the temple, the voice of the Lord, who fully repays his enemies. 7, before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came, she delivered a man-child. Who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made? And I believe that should be rendered land. And I'll tell you why. Shall the land be made to give birth in one day? Or shall a nation? Okay, so we talked about nation having a landmass. So that's why I say land, because the nation is not the whole earth. All right, so the subject matter is why, or the context is why I say that should probably be translated as land. Shall the land be made to give birth in one day, or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion was in labor, so now we see how this is, the analogy is coming to an understanding. Shall give birth to her children. The children is the children of Israel, the people of the land. Shall I bring to the time of birth? So, let me finish reading this 9. And not cause delivery, says the Lord. Shall I cause delivery, shut up the womb, says your God? Right? So, with those verses that I read, basically what is decoded is that the birth pains or the labor pains is what he's causing in the cities as he repays his enemies. So those are the birth pains, because the Zion is the woman in this analogy. So she's going through the pains. The woman goes through the pains during the labor of the childbirth or whatever. So she's suffering as he's punishing the enemies, the people that need to be punished in the land, whether it be Israel or the people that came in and subdued the land, right? And then what he's saying is the birth is them actually coming back to the land. So she's birthing this righteous seed or whatever. And so what he's saying is, like, these things have to happen. Like, a woman doesn't, he said, where it says, who has heard such a thing? So basically he's saying these things have to happen before y'all come back into the land. Like, I have to repay the enemies, and purge the land and bring y'all back. So that's all I wanted to do for that point. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to.
No, just the end is what I was just going to really not even speak about. Just read it at and see what y'all
okay,
say.
You can do that. And then you can go ahead and do that. I know it talks about rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad with her. All you who love her, rejoice. So, like I said, it's kind of like if you visualize it as a pregnancy thing, and the woman Zion or Jerusalem, and she's giving birth, basically bringing the children of Israel back to the land, the people rejoicing for the land's restoration and the return of Israel. So, but go ahead and read what you got, and then we can go ahead and try to close it out.
All right. Hold on. All right, so I thought this was interesting, verse 23 through 24. And it reads, it shall be that at every new moon and on every Shabbat, all mankind will come to prostrate themselves before me, says Yah. And they will go out and see the corpses of the men who rebelled against me, for their decay will not cease, and their fire will not be extinguished, and they will lie in disgrace before all mankind. So, I wanted to know, for the listeners out there, or if you wanted to speak on it, you'll have to, what's your thoughts on that last part, the ending of Yeshayahu 66? So if it's anybody that's listening, please press 1.
Yeah, I don't think no one is there.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't see right now. So what's your take on that? With the ending part, he's saying that we, every new moon and on every Sabbath, all mankind will come to prostrate themselves before me.
So where exactly are you looking at it at?
Last two verses, 23, 24.
Oh, I ain't get down to that part. Okay.
Wait, I thought you told me to say my part. I didn't know if you wanted me to. Remember I said my last point was at the end.
Oh, no. I was saying I was looking at the wrong verses.
Oh, okay.
Because, I type my stuff out, so it's on a piece of paper. I'm not looking in a book or anything like that. So I just didn't scroll down all the way. Moon together, all flesh is what this one say, shall come to worship me before me, says the Lord. And they shall go forth and look upon the corpse of the men who have transgressed against me, for their one does not die. It's interesting. I still, when it says, I guess when I look at this, I kind of envision that he's talking to a particular set of individuals. So when I see stuff like all flesh or all people, I'm thinking of the people that he is speaking to, like concerning this New Jerusalem and all that stuff. Like, now I know he talks about the nations or whatever before that, and who accept, will send to the nations, Tarshish and Pul and Lud, who draw the bow. He's talking about my fame nor seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. So that's kind of showing me, he's talking about the bow and stuff. I'm seeing that they're going to, like, basically go out and subdue them and show them that, like, the Most High is with us again, basically. And shall declare my glory. So they're going to declare glory amongst the Gentiles. Then they shall bring all your brethren. So that's them going to, man, I didn't even see this part. This is them going out and basically retrieving their brothers for an offering to the Lord out of all nations, on horses and chariots, and in litters and mules. So he's bringing that remnant back, and I guess it's going to be a certain portion, and then on this, like, they're going to go out and retrieve the rest of their people. I've never even, and he ain't talking about, like, just on some preaching type stuff. This is talking about, like, forcefully to my holy mountain, Jerusalem. You tell me if I'm reading something wrong, if yours say something different.
Your verse again?
19 and 20. To my holy mountain, says the Lord. Huh?
I was reading mine. It says, I will put a sign. It says, I will put a sign upon them and send some of them as survivors to the nations, Tarshish, Pul, Lud, the archers, Tubal, and Javan, the distant islands, who have not heard of my fame and not seen my glory. And they will declare my glory among the nations. They will bring all your brethren from all the nations as an offering to Yah, with horses and with chariots and with covered wagons and with mules. With joyous dances to my holy mountain, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, says Yahweh, just as the children of Yisrael bring the offering in a pure vessel to the house of Yah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it says, I will also take some of them for priests and Levites, says the Lord. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, says the Lord, so shall your descendants and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from... So, just in context, what I get from that is that, like, in that restoration process, which this is crazy because if people believe this is supposed to be a futuristic thing, that means they're going to have to go to war and go get their brothers from all these places that they talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
We got 3 minutes left, about 3 minutes.
Okay. And then, so, I'm just going to close and just say, just to answer your question, I believe that this is specifically speaking of the people of Yisrael that are, worshiping before him after they go retrieve everybody and he creates this new heaven and new earth in context. But if we want to believe that this is for us, then this is what is supposed to happen. And I've never heard nobody say anything like this. And I'll close with that.
And with that being said, I don't have anything to add because minutes is ticking. So I just want everybody to next week we're going to have a finale show recapping on things that took throughout this whole season. After that, I guess we'll mention what's going to take place after the recap. So just be aware that next week we won't be going over any scriptures because we are done with this season. We're just going to recap. Clear your minds. Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day, another Shabbat to come together and go through your scriptures contextually. We appreciate you for pouring down your understanding, your spirit. We ask that you continue to do so, and we ask that you continue to bring us together and let your platform, not ours, but your platform grow and allow us to continue to be a chad, to continue to be one and just put your message out there. We ask that you will look over those that did not make it, and for those that did, we ask that you keep them. We ask these things in your holy name. We pray. Amen.